Let's continue this session. We started our discussion on price in the previous session. So now we are going to discuss a few other things about pricing concepts. Okay, and in the context of product, please make sure that we discussed the 3 levels of product concept, as well as the adjustments. Okay, so any marketing mix variables that we discuss in here, please also discuss the adjustments. Okay, the product analysis, please include the 3 levels of product concept and the adjustments. The placement, please discuss the channel strategy, the distribution coverage strategy, and also the logistical aspects, okay, and how you would adjust it, okay, the possible adjustment that you propose, right, in your business strategy. Okay, now price. Okay, so we discussed the pricing concept yesterday, and now let's move on. There are a few things in terms of pricing strategies that we need to look at. Okay, business marketing organizations need to consider this when it comes to considering their price, making a decision about their price. Okay, the first one is the price ceiling, which is basically the maximum dollar value that I can charge to the customers. Okay, now that one reflects the value perception. So we can't charge our customers higher than that, because if it is higher than that, the customers will think it is a rip-off. Okay, it is, although our brand is probably a strong one, but if it is too much, they will feel it is a rip-off. Okay, and on the other hand, we also need to consider the product costs. Okay, that is actually the price floor. Okay, this is what we label as a price floor. Okay, now for international operation, please consider the logistical function as well. Okay, because sending the products to the shipment, the products to the customers from our logistical center might be more costly rather than reaching the customers in our domestic market. Okay, and this is one of the things that we also need to adjust in terms of looking at the product cost, and we also need to consider the exchange rate, if you like, where the exchange rate may be different when we apply to the host market. Okay. On top of that, we have the other considerations in our pricing strategy. Okay, so that helps us to determine the pricing strategy as well. Now let's look at this briefly. Okay, the other considerations include the business objectives. Okay, business strategies. Okay, some business strategies may determine that we'll take just a little bit of profits for this market, but we expect we can build our credential in that market, and we can preempt our competitors from entering this market. Okay, therefore we want to charge the price a bit low than the other markets, but we still make profits. Okay, now if you adopt that strategy, you also need to consider whether there may be people shipping the products back to home markets. Okay, so that is the danger that we also need to rethink. Okay, and of course we also need to look at the economic factors, such as the nature of demand and supply, the competitor strategies and prices. Okay, and there are external factors in that industry. Okay, including the cultural factors, the purchase power, and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, so this is the major pricing strategies. We have 3 options when it comes to major pricing strategies. We can refer to the customer value-based pricing strategy, where we price our product based on the customer's perception. Okay. And the second one is cost-based pricing strategy, where we price our product based on the cost and we top up with the markup, certain level of markup based on our policy. Okay. And the last one is competition-based pricing, where we look at we review the competitors' pricing strategies, their market offerings, and we normally compare our offering and the competitors' offerings, and we look into it, and we determine whether our offering is superior or inferior, and then we make a decision. Now, one thing I'd like to highlight, though, we may say that our offering is superior, okay, but more importantly is to find out whether our customers can tell that our offering is more superior or not. If not, then it is useless, okay? And some product may find it hard to communicate their superior quality, for instance, okay? If you look at some categories such as vitamin and dietary supplements, you may find it hard to communicate the benefits. Okay, I have taken your vitamin, not the other brand's vitamin. What does it mean? Does it mean I can live 10 years longer, or I can jump 10 meters longer, for instance? Okay, so you also need to consider if you use that pricing strategy. Okay, well, it may also be this superior in here may also be may also revolve around your brand credibility, your brand reputation that shows some quality stamp. Okay, all right. We understand that in the olden days, pricing was considered as just the addendum. Now we say that there is a connection between price and the perception of the consumers. Therefore, we need to take that into consideration as well. Okay, in some markets, for instance, like China, we understand that the Chinese consumers, right? So we understand the Chinese consumers prefer Western brands. So Western brands can command higher price than local brands, basically. Okay, you can also have the benefit because of that. That actually helps the value perception of the consumers, because if our brand is from a country that is quite popular when it comes to the product category, such as technological products, for instance, then yes, we have the opportunity to command higher price, but of course you need to substantiate it. Okay. Well, we may also need to think about new product. If this is your new entry to the market, you also need to consider, aside from the previous three pricing strategies, you can also consider this one. So either market skimming pricing strategy or market penetration pricing strategy. Now, not to confuse you, for this pricing strategy, the concept that you can include is either this one, okay, or this one, okay. So one of these or one of these, okay, as your major pricing strategy. Okay, I'm assuming that some people, a lot of you may, for assessment, may involve the new product launch because it is a new market entry anyway. So let's look at it briefly. Market skimming pricing strategy basically charge the consumers with high price, so they get high margin per unit, but their volume is low. Okay, and market penetration pricing strategy is basically about charging setting the price low because they want to penetrate to a higher level of customers, and they are making lower level of profit per unit, but they are expecting to make a large volume. Therefore, they expect the profitability comes from higher level of volume. Okay, so if we go back to the consideration, okay, if the strategic objective of the company is to preempt the competitors, then we may want to consider market penetration pricing strategy, because that helps, that makes the industry not that attractive for the competitors to enter the industry, or at least that makes the competitors to to be in a challenging position from pricing perspective. Okay. And market skimming, again, if you charge high price, then yes, the industry will be attractive. You're making high profit per unit, and the industry will be attractive. Once you build that industry, you nurture that industry, it is profitable, and definitely you have the opportunity to reinvest the profit back to your innovation strategies. Okay. At the same time, you also attract your competitors to come in. Okay, and they're looking at the industry as very attractive. Well, the price is quite high. Therefore, if I participate in that industry, I have the opportunity to make some profit, and I may undercut the price from the market leader, in this instance you, because you built the industry. Okay, right. Now the next pricing strategy. When you operate in the in business, you may have more than one pricing strategy. Select one of these as well, okay, to your product mix pricing strategy, because you may launch a number of products into that market. Okay, so the first option is the product line pricing. That means you set prices across the entire product line. All right, please make sure that you specify the dollar value, how much that is. All right, yes, I'm going to charge this much, that much, and so on and so forth. Okay, so think about a hotel industry, for instance. They may have the suite room, president suite room, deluxe room, standard room. They have different pricing strategies for each products or services. Okay. The second one is the optional product pricing, where we actually have the accessory. Okay, so if our business is mobile phone, for instance, we have the for instance the screen protector, for instance, or the charger, the battery. Okay, so they are part of these accessories, and we need to set the prices as well. Okay. And we also have the captive product pricing strategy, where we also have the accessories, main product and accessories, and we need to set up different prices for these products. Okay. Now, in the case of captive product pricing strategy, we actually charge the main product low price, because we expect to get the business from the accessory products. Okay. If you think about printer category, for instance, when they just launched printers, they charge quite high price. But today, because of the economies of scale, the volume is quite high. With $30 we can get a printer basically. And aside from that, they also expect to get more business from us, because we buy the accessories, and we also buy the toners and the other consumable accessories. Okay, and just a reminder, if you adopt that strategy, make sure that your customers do not have the options to buy the accessories. Otherwise, you're not going to make the business. Okay. By product pricing strategy, we charge low price because we want to get rid of the product. All right, and probably this one is not that relevant for you. And the next one is product bundle pricing strategy, where we sell more than one item with one single price. Okay, in the B2B category, very likely the organizations offer as a package. Okay, they sell the product. Okay, and the contract to service or the maintenance of the product. Okay, so they may come up with one bundle pricing strategy. Okay, that is also an option for business to business industry. Okay, this is the product. Let's say any certain machine. Okay, and this is the price if the customers purchase separately, and this is the service contract, for instance, right, for regular maintenance, for regular check, for instance, by the B2B vendor. Okay, and they may sell as a package. okay, in one package. All right, with this price, you get that machine, and you also get the routine check from us, let's say in every month, all right, or every quarter, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, remember, we discussed that price is the only marketing mix variables that is easy to adjust. Okay, so please consider one of these as well in terms of how you adjust your pricing strategy. Okay, you may use discount and allowance pricing because you actually offer, you actually get a better deal with these customers, better trading terms with the customers. Either they pay early or they buy in bulk. Okay, segmented pricing, we offer that for a specific customer group. Okay, some companies in the international operations, some companies may adopt a different pricing strategy to certain market. Okay, because they understand the purchase power is different. So it is kind of if the price is less than the other markets, then it is kind of subsidizing. Okay, so they may absorb the exchange rate, for instance. Okay, especially if the exchange rate is just becoming unfavorable for the host market. They may absorb that because they think about that market as being strategic in the future, or the volume is quite large if they win the market. Okay, so they expect that the high volume can offset the subsidy in quote unquote that they are giving. So psychological pricing, probably more into the business to consumer market, where they adjust the prices for psychological effects. Okay, the promotional pricing, reduce the price for temporary periods because you want to gain high volume during that period. Geographical pricing, they adjust the price to certain locations. Now, for international operations, the geographical pricing is probably related to the international pricing, where we adjust the price according to the international market. Okay, so for this market, this is our price. That market, this is our price. And for our domestic market, we also have a different pricing strategy because we consider the shipment cost. Okay, remember, price is the only opportunity for the organizations to make revenue, and eventually we expect the price exceeds the cost, so we expect the price leads to profits. Okay, and dynamic pricing, adjusting the price continually to meet the characteristics of the customers. Now, in international marketing operation, you may find if it is in the context of consumer market, then you may find some industries set their prices on negotiation. Okay, in their operation. Okay. All right. So again, a few things that you need to consider when it comes to price adjustments. Okay, the exchange rate. Okay, the purchase power. Okay, you may want to set your price in Australian dollars. Okay, on your assessments, but you also need to think about. Let's say if you sell the products at $2.80 in your home market, in the other market, how much would it be? Would you charge the same price, considering the shipment, considering everything, considering you will also manufacture the products in the host market, for instance? Okay, you also need to consider the purchase power. Okay, the distribution cost, and again the parallel import. The parallel import is actually about some customers may buy the products in bulk in the host market and ship back to our home market. Okay, the import duty, export in this instance, the brand, and the other potential issues when it comes to pricing for the international market. Okay, just guys briefly about the economic factors, demand, but the demand and supply. This is what I mean by demand, and just it reflects the quantity of goods or service, okay, that all economic actors chooses to buy at a given price, okay, and the buyers actually choose to buy not only based on what they desire, okay, but they also consider their affordability. Okay, so demand concept from economic management perspective looks into both of them. Okay, and this concept actually attracts both marketers and also economics. They look at it from a different perspective. The economists look at it from the quantity and why demand works that way. Okay, why do we get that quantity of demand? Okay, and the marketers actually is interested more into how can we manage the demand, when can we stimulate higher demand, or can we reduce the demand if the capacity of the operation is limited, for instance. Okay. And they introduced the ceteris paribus. I'm not going to talk about it in detail, okay? And but when it comes to analyzing the demand, we actually refer to the ceteris paribus. We look at price as the only factor that affects demand, and we assume the other factors are constants, okay? But we know that it is not correct, okay? Now let's look at that. The demand, we actually know that the demand is the demand curve is what we call as the downward slope. So what it means is actually referring to the law of demand. We say that if the price is quite high, the quantity demanded would be quite low. In fact, if it is extremely high, the quantity demanded maybe is zero. Okay, when the price falls, the quantity demanded will increase. Okay, that's the law of demand, which is basically reflecting the downward slope of the demand curve. Okay, now if the demand increase or decrease is affected by the price, then we say it is a movement along concept. So price is the only factor affecting that. Okay, referring to the ceteris paribus concept. Okay, but as we discussed before, there are factors that affect the demand to change. Right? In this instance, we actually say the demand to shift either to the left or to the right. Okay, so if we draw okay, this is our demand curve, okay, where this is our quantity, okay, and this is our price, okay. So if the quantity demanded is affected by price, that means we talk about the movement along, okay. Now, on the other occasion, we may also find that the quantity demanded is affected by non-price factors. Okay, so we may have the let's say, oops, sorry, my graph, I can't control my cursor. I apologize for that. So, for instance, we may have the it may shift to the right. If it shifts to the right, what we expect is actually the demand is increased. Okay, but there are factors that we call as the non-price factors that affect the price increase, that affect the demand shift to the right. Okay, the non-price factor in here includes the lifestyle of the consumers, for instance. Okay, the income of the consumers, right? If the income of the consumers are getting better, then it's good. So they may, at the same price, they may demand larger than that. Okay. The lifestyle of the consumers on the other side may decrease the demand at the same price. Okay, they may reduce their consumption. Okay, so that might happen to any product category. Okay, now look at your product category. Which one is more appropriate when it comes to analyzing? If you look at the entire industry. Okay, right. So the next concept is just briefly about the price elasticity, okay, which is basically about the degree of the responsiveness or sensitivity of the market response to changes in prices. Okay, So if our product is very, if the price of our product is sensitive, that means a little change on the price will affect the consumption, will affect the quantity demanded in that of our product. Okay. Now, as a result, the organizations normally don't like that fact, okay, because it's hard for them to improve their volume, to increase their volume without changing the price that affects their profitability. Okay, so the key word in there is if we want our price to be inelastic, okay, that means it not affected by the price. The volume is not affected by the price. Okay, then the keyword is how can we reduce the options. Okay, or how can we reduce the domination of the other options in that market. Okay, that is actually the keyword that we need to have. Okay, so from economic management perspective, we actually need to keep thinking about innovation in that industry. All right, unless we are actually the only option that the consumers need. Okay, if you look at petrol prices, for instance, okay, if the price increases, well, people still buy, all right, because we don't have any other options. Okay, the reason why petrol consumption is decreased is in the last 10-15 years is because the car manufacturers produce more efficient car, more fuel efficient cars. But if you look at the consumption per individual, although the price is increased, we still fill up the petrol. Okay, all right, because we are lacking of options. Okay, and again, that's an example. Okay, if you compare that with the other product categories such as juice, for instance. Okay, if apple juice is in price of the apple juice is increased, consumers may find their options, for instance. Okay, right. So that's basically the price elasticity. Now, the other thing that I would also like to briefly discuss about pricing is the market structure. Market structure is actually about how we compete in that industry. That is determined by the number of firms in that industry, the freedom of entry or barriers to entry, and the rivals product, or that reflect the degree of similarity of the products. Okay, now there are 4 types of market structure. The first one is perfect competition, where we have many firms, many players in that industry, and the barriers to entry is quite little. Okay, in fact, it is unrestricted, so anybody can technically jump into that industry. The rivals products are identical. Now, in theory, we may not be able to find a perfect example for this kind of market structure. But if you look at tomato, for instance, we can assume tomato is quite close to it, or international rice price is another example, if you like, where it is determined by supply and demand. Okay, if we compete in the perfect competition, if we operate in the perfect competition, then we actually are the price taker, right? Our price is determined by the demand and supply in the market. Okay, if the supply is increased, okay, or is increasing, okay, that there's a trend of an increasing trend of the supply, then our price will be under pressure. Okay, so that's the perfect competition. On the other side, consumers will like it because they will have more options, and the options will be affordable for them. Okay, and in our attempt to get away from the perfect competition, we need to erect the barriers to entry. Okay, by innovation, for instance. So we innovate. Either you revisit the tomato, you create something with the tomato, right, from your farm, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you innovate. Okay. Or you do something else to innovate. Okay. Now, in our attempt to erect the barriers to entry, we may have little success. Therefore, we still invite many players into that industry. As a result, we are actually competing in what we call as the monopolist competition. Okay, the products may be slightly different. Okay, they address similar needs of the customers. Okay, for instance, small business would normally be classified in the industry. Okay, like restaurant, for instance, they may offer different type of food, Chinese food, Thai food, Italian food. Okay, but they are competing in the restaurant category. Okay. Now, in the short term, actually, from economic management perspective, are they making profit? Yes, they are making profits. Okay, but in longer term, since the barriers to entry is low, they invite more and more players coming into that industry. Therefore, we share the customers with the competitors, right? And we also expect that the supply will increase as a result. If we recall the demand and supply law, if the supply is increased, then our price will be under pressure. As a result, in longer term, in the monopoly competition, we actually reduce our profitability until all players achieve the break-even point. Okay, so we don't like that situation. Therefore, again, we recommend people to from this analysis, we actually recommend people to keep innovating. Okay, keep differentiating their products so we can come up with something else, something new, so that helps us to maintain our price point. In our attempt to get away from the perfect competition, we may be able to erect the barriers to entry better. Okay, as a result, we only attract fewer people, right? The industry can only attract a fewer number of players to that industry. Okay, large companies would normally compete in the oligopoly competition. If you look at in Australia, we have supermarket industry, banking industry, car industry. Okay, the major brands basically capture the majority of the market share. All right. And why is that? Because the barriers to entry is quite high. How come it is quite high? Because they have the resources to erect the barriers to entry. When they do advertising campaign, for instance, when they do their activities to actually erect the barriers to entry. Okay. Now, if that is the industry that we are committing, we actually look at one to another when it comes to managing the price. Okay, if you look at banking industry in Australia, for instance, we may when the RBA slash the interest rates. Normally they do that at 25 basis points, and the four major banks will normally look at one to another, actually look at the signal in the market. Okay, if one of them leads the way, passing 20 or 15 or 20 basis points to the consumers, and the others will follow that pathway. But in the case of supermarkets, it is leading to the price war. If you look at the Woolies and Coles, for instance. Okay. The next one is monopoly, where we basically have only one firm because the freedom of entry is blocked, basically. Okay. Now there are two possibilities in here. Either it is blocked because of the regulation. It is given by the government, given the right by the government to run certain industry, for instance, or it could be by default. Okay, the volume of that market can only have one player only, right? If we have the second player, then there is not enough volume for the second for two players, right? If you drive, for instance, from Sydney to Gold Coast, and you may stop by at the little town, and you only find one petrol station that also sells some groceries, right? And that one petrol station by default is the monopoly holder in that industry. Okay, right. So that's the market structure, guys. Have a look at your own industry, where which market that your industry is competing. Okay, and from there that helps you to think about your pricing strategy. Okay. Right, now, look, guys, I still have the promotion and a brief HR discussion. Could I please ask, and I have got the reminder that we only have a few minutes left. Could I please ask, we stop here and you come back to the meeting room by clicking the same link, so we can complete the other topics as well. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Please give me 2-3 minutes to convert the files, right? To save the files, and I'll be with you, okay? Or I'll see you there, okay? Cheers.
Thank you.